When Georgia and Georgia-based companies specifically started releasing statements criticizing Georgia's voter suppression law, Mitch McConnell told them to stay out of politics. It's not their place. No place for corporations in politics, which is a strange message to have when you love whoring yourself to corporate interests by taking legalized bribes. But he did take some time to clarify and offer an important caveat. Let's watch.
I'm not talking about political contributions. Most of them contribute to both sides. They have political action committees. That's fine. It's legal. It's appropriate. I support that. I'm talking about taking a position on a highly incendiary issue like this and punishing a community or a state because you don't like a particular law they passed. I just think it's stupid.
I think it's stupid that, none of it makes sense. And I'll explain why. We'll explain why in just a minute. But keep in mind that the only real action that's been taken so far has been by the Major League Baseball. They've decided to move their All-Star game out of Georgia because of this voter suppression law. And I think that that's their right. They don't agree with it and they wanted to make a move and they did. But when it comes to corporations, all they have done is offer up hollow platitudes, statements, whatever, just to kind of calm people down because there were growing calls for these Georgia-based companies to say something. Now, I think talk is cheap, and to be quite honest with you, I don't care what corporations have to say. But getting back to Mitch McConnell, he thinks that corporations are people when it comes to unlimited campaign donations and legalized bribery. But corporations don't tend to be people with First Amendment rights when it comes to any type of critique or criticism toward awful laws that literally do away with people's ability to vote, right? And what I mean by that is they make it, with this law that just passed in Georgia, incredibly difficult for certain communities to cast their ballot. And that was done intentionally after Georgia flipped from red to blue and Biden won that state. There was no evidence of voter fraud, not a single shred of evidence. And they decided to do this because Republicans are so unpopular, so awful with their platform, that they would rather rig the election to their favor as opposed to maybe taking a good hard look at how awful and unpopular they are with their platform. That's really what's happening at the end of the day.
Didn't Matt Gaetz have something about what you do when your ideas suck? Maybe they should listen to him. Yeah, so McConnell's thing is pretty simple. Of course, companies should give them money when they do things, but they shouldn't not give them money when they do things. Do you think that companies should be involved in our politics or don't you? That's all it is. That's the entire thing. And also, and more generally, even if we weren't talking specifically about corporate finance, when I know you're gonna go into how much money he's gotten from corporations, oh my God, it's so much. Is it good when companies are really openly political? Is it good for companies to be openly political only when they sell beans and pillows? Are those the ones that can do it, but none of the others? Which is it? Because right now, as I always say, you are mad at them because they said something that's not correct politically. That's all it is. They said and did something that you didn't like. You've spent all year saying that companies shouldn't be stopped, like they shouldn't be pressured to be politically correct. What are they doing right now with these boycotts that they're not actually boycotting and all this pressure? It's trying to push back a corporation for what they did politically or what they said. It's the exact same thing. And yet I know that we're gonna get past this. And not only are we still gonna have the voter suppression law, but we're still gonna have way too many Americans, and not just Republicans, that buy into this idea of cancel culture and political correctness being a thing that has anything to do with the left side of the spectrum, rather than just a careful narrative to very specifically identify certain types of behavior about some people we don't like, while allowing other people to do the exact same thing. Say whatever they want, try not to be criticized, and then criticize other people when they do things you don't like. No, everybody doesn't like some things. Corporations can do some things we'll like and some things we won't. And you know what you should do? When you don't like it, speak out. When you do like it, speak out. Hell, just speak a lot. That's the only like reasonable standard. This idea that we can set up some sort of like matrix to analyze. Here are corporations that have specifically bowed down to wokeness or whatever. It doesn't actually mean anything. And that wouldn't be a big problem if it was just Republicans that were talking about political correctness and cancel culture. But when you have tons of people, including some with big audiences like Bill Maher, that are getting across this idea that it really is a problem for the left and not something that everyone does, that is actually dangerous because that might stop some people from speaking out.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about that. And Mitch McConnell, when you really look at his political career, he's the king of having his cake and eating it too. I mean, think about it in the context of Supreme Court nominations or confirmations. When it came to Obama's Supreme Court pick with Merrick Garland, with a year out before the presidential election, Mitch McConnell put a halt to it, basically prevented the confirmation hearings from taking place, arguing that, we're too close to the election. Why don't we wait until after the election and then whoever wins gets to decide. And then of course, then he turns around and does exactly what you would expect Mitch McConnell to do once Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away and Amy Coney Barrett was nominated by Donald Trump very close to election day. So I bring that up because he gets away with that all the time. He gets to set the terms, he sets the rules. Corporations should stay out of politics unless they're padding my pockets and my campaign. Other than that, don't want to hear about what they have to say. By the way, we need to protect their First Amendment rights because they're people, which is garbage. Obviously they're not. And Mitch McConnell's been spewing these talking points his entire political career. This is not new. For instance, when the Supreme Court made one of the worst rulings it has ever made in Citizens United. Here's what Mitch McConnell said. This is on January 21st, 2010. He said, for too long, some in this country have been deprived of full participation in the political process. With today's monumental decision, the Supreme Court took an important step in the direction of restoring the First Amendment rights of these groups by ruling that the Constitution protects their right to express themselves about political candidates and issues up until election day. Oh, really? Oh, really? You want them to weigh in on issues? I mean, obviously he's full of it because it's all about legalized bribery and nothing more. In fact, when the Senate finally passed the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act in 2002 with a bare minimum tally of 60 votes, McConnell sued the Federal Election Commission to block the legislation. That lawsuit, McConnell versus FEC, upheld most parts of the law, but eventually gave way to that 2010 Citizens United ruling that he, of course, fervently backed. And even when he was teaching in the 70s, he was, propagandizing these students to think money in politics is great. As NPR reported, McConnell went to the front of the classroom and he wrote on the chalkboard, the 3 things you need to succeed in politics and to build a political party: money, money, money. And so since he loves whoring himself out, why don't we take a good hard look at what kind of companies paid for him? Blackstone Group is actually his top political contributor. And these are campaign contributions in his entire political career starting in 1989. Total donations, nearly $500,000 just from Blackstone Group alone. You have healthcare companies there, Kindred Healthcare, Humana Inc., UPS, which might help you understand why Republicans like him have no problem with tearing the United States Postal Service apart and defunding it. You look at the next set of donors. You have Blue Cross Blue Shield, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase. I mean, the list goes on and on. He loves money in politics. He's addicted to it. So when it comes to this type of corporate activity, he's all for it. But if you criticize the deterioration of our political process due to a suppression law in the state of Georgia, why don't you just shut up and dribble? Basically, that's what he's got to say about it.
Yeah, well, and yes, that was all great, and it's I don't know, it feels even a little bit more like corrosive. Like these companies need to manage their image. That is what they are always doing, not just in politics, in literally everything. They don't want to do things that will reflect poorly on them. Doing the All-Star game in Georgia right now could conceivably hurt them. They seem to have had a little meeting and they've decided that. So Mitch McConnell is saying, like, they can't cancel it. They have to take the damage, which is a political stance. Knowing that doing something will reflect poorly on you and continuing to do it is a choice. He's saying you have to make that choice. And that is a thread that runs through most of these sorts of stories. So if you ever published a book that had some racist images in it, even if nobody reads them, you have to keep publishing it. If you're Dr. Seuss, you cannot stop publishing it. Because if you stop publishing it, that's politically incorrect to the Republicans, I guess. So you have to take the damage potentially to your reputation and maybe even monetary damage to not frustrate them, to not offend them. It's absolute nonsense. In this case, having it and not having it are both political decisions. Any huge event being held in Georgia right now, when that is basically ground zero for voter suppression, could reflect poorly on companies. It is not irrational of them to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what about their workers, right? How many of their workers lean Democrat? How many of their workers are African American? Not that corporations have a great track record of looking out for their workers, but and again, the other side of this, and I think it's really important to keep it in mind, like we need to move away from demanding theater from corporations and from politicians. Like, we want you to release a statement about this. Okay, great, they released a statement, now what? That does nothing. So again, talk is cheap. I'm glad that they're speaking out. I'm not trying to take away from, I guess, the small upside to that. But it's one thing to cave to pressure from Americans by just releasing a statement. Something entirely different to actually put action behind that. Like, for instance, a lot of these companies that are based in Georgia specifically donate money to these Republican lawmakers. Are they gonna stop doing that in Georgia? Are they gonna stop doing that? Are they gonna stop with those campaign donations?
I mean, some companies that initially said that they were no longer gonna make donations to those who were trying to steal the election have already backtracked on that just a few months ago, doing exactly what was predicted. When people are paying attention to it, they say they're not going to, and then a couple months later, we kind of want influence though.
Exactly.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.